Good evening. Welcome to the Adventures Club of Los Angeles. My name is Rich Mayfield, member 1211. I'm here tonight with Mike Clark, member 1171. Thank you for coming, Mike.
Hey, thank you for the invite.
Yeah, it's good to have you here.
Absolutely. Good to be back.
Yeah, so we're broadcasting live again, right? People are going to be in the chat asking questions. We'll do a little Q&A at the end. But let's go ahead and get started. So I understand that you have taken some trips to Haiti in your lifetime.
Yeah, I've been traveling to Haiti for about the last almost 20 years now and stuff like that. It's one of my favorite places to go. I think that there's just so much the country has to offer. So, from the adventure side of it, you have, great motorcycling throughout the country. Just incredible roads, incredible mountains. You have scuba diving, wreck diving, there's coral reefs. There is some of the reefs that have been destroyed just due to the deforestation and stuff like that, but there's still enough intact that it makes it very enjoyable. The Haitian people are just outstanding. Out in the rural areas, where you're staying and stuff, you get invited into a house or something, and it's just really great people and just a great place to go, and you're not going to see many tourists.
So this is one of those places, it's close to the U.S., but pretty untouched by tourism, which is unique.
Yeah, its infrastructure is very limited, so you're not going to have the big buses going to the sites. You will have some tourists there. You have a lot of the religious people that go down and they're going to do different types of volunteer projects and things like that, especially during the summer months and during some of the holidays. But for the most part, it's pretty open. During the times with the festivals, Voodoo is a huge draw down there. You'll see a lot of photographers coming from, a lot of the major networks and stuff like that, major publications, and, everybody kind of congregates down there and works together and finds out different ceremonies going on, so it makes it a lot of fun, and you can really kind of blend a trip.
Yeah. So tell me about the first time you went to Haiti. When was it, what was the first trip down there that really got you hooked? Because 20 plus times, something like that? Countless times?
Yeah, I've been down there over 20 times and stuff like that. And, it was years ago I went down there. I was trying to scuba dive all the islands of the Caribbean and stuff. Okay. And so I went down, I dove, I stayed at the Hotel Olafson, which is just this spectacular hotel that Richard Morse took over, I believe in the late 80s. And he's been managing it, but it's a gingerbread hotel. So Graham Greene, his book is loosely based on that hotel for the book The Comedians.
So what is a gingerbread hotel?
It's this hotel that has all these wood ornaments cut in. So hanging from the hotel all the way around, it's it almost looks like crystal hanging, but it's wood. And it's just this old hotel that you can wander around, and it just is a real standout, in the central part of Haiti, and it's a go-to place. A little bit run down right now and stuff like that, but it always packs the people in. And then Richard, he also has a band down there called Ram, which are outstanding. He's well known throughout the island.
Is he an expat? Is Richard an expat?
I believe he was. I believe he's Puerto Rican. He was in the States for a long period of time and then moved down there in the late 80s. I don't know a great deal about him and stuff like that. I know he's a great guy when I'm there. He's very helpful and stuff like that with finding things. But his band brings in, hundreds of Haitians, and there's this wild party that happens every October 31st. And that's probably my favorite time of the year to go there it's Fête Gede, which is the Day of the Dead.
Okay.
So you fly in on the 25th or something, you can motorcycle, go do a bunch of adventure stuff, and then end up at the hotel on the night of the 30th. And the parties start on the 31st. And there's these wild parties that go into the night.
So what did you say the Day of the Dead was called?
So Fête Gede. Gede are spirits. So the spirits of the dead come back, and it's a celebration to them. So you'll see people, they'll start to dress more in purple and white and red. People will powder their faces. When it takes place, the graveyards are full all day long. There'd be thousands and thousands of people in the main graveyard in downtown Port-au-Prince, and then all around there at some of the other graveyards in some of the other cities that are connected to the main part of Port-au-Prince, those will also be filled.
And are they taking care of graves and putting flowers out or memorials or whatever, or are they partying?
Well, there is some partying. It's really, there's different rituals that are going on. There's a black cross in each of the different cemeteries that people go to pray at and stuff like that. It's somewhat theatrical. You'll see people dressed up in different outfits of who they might have been possessed by. or which, gods or lower spirits, what spirits they follow. There's just so much going on, and that's what really the draw is. But you'll have, 1,000 people just packed in, and you go into these things and just wander through the crypts. And the crypts are, pretty torn apart. Bodies are stolen often. So that's, something that happens. That's why
are bodies stolen? I mean, not from medical research, right? They
No.
used to be like what?
I'm sure some is robbery, but a lot of it is ritual. So,
Okay.
different parts of the human body are used in certain rituals and stuff like that. So things are taken. You'll see coffins that are broke open, and you'll see, skeletons laid out. All kinds of different things can be taking place during that time. You'll see people possessed within the, graveyard itself. And, Haiti's one of those places where, basically anything can happen. I remember coming out of the graveyard one night. I was with 3 buddies, and we were probably 50 feet away, and a guy got stabbed and murdered on the side of the street, right as we were driving 50
By
feet
someone
from
who
us.
was possessed.
No, this was what we found out later was, that the person was laying there and they bled out. We found out later that there was an argument over opening the graveyard early in the morning, and one of the graveyard workers was actually murdered by one of the people he wouldn't let in. So anything can happen there, and you see this sea of people, and you might see somebody carrying a coffin on their head. You might see somebody carrying around skulls. You might see, any kind of different type of thing that like the Gede would want, the spirits. And another big thing that comes from that is also they make a rum, and they'll put these hot peppers into it and stuff like that. And they'll drink the rum, they'll rub it in their eyes, they'll rub it on their genitals, all the different stuff that the Gede gets, and they'll dance and get crazy and just really involved in these start of possessions.
So a Gede is a spirit.
A Gede is a spirit.
And the idea is on the Day of the Dead, these spirits kind of come down and possess random people walking around, or are these people trying to invite a spirit to?
Yeah, a lot of
possess
times,
them? What's the deal?
when you go to the different, so a peristyle is where the voodoo ceremonies take place. And there's
It's like a temple or like a memorial or what? What's
yeah,
a
it's like a temple, but a temple. It's hard to explain. Like in Haiti, it could be a small shack that has a certain spirit that they worship and stuff like that, and they'll have altars to that spirit. They'll have Chroma Lithographs, which are the Catholic saints that they associate with the voodoo spirit. Going back
What's
to
a Chroma Lithograph?
So Chroma Lithograph is like, a Catholic saint. So if you see like St. Peter or something like that,
Okay.
That's the picture that they'll have. And that relates back to like slave time when they were first brought over and stuff like that in, the early 1700s, and the Catholic Church and enforcing the religion on them. They were able to use, voodoo and bring some of their religious characters back in and blend them with the Catholic Church. So there's a syncretism between the two religions. But going back to what takes place in the graveyard, yes, certain people are possessed. They call it being mounted. They're like a horse. The spirit comes down. Most of the rituals that you watch are going to take place at a temple. And a temple can be anything. There might be something just set up in the forest. It could be like, set temples that you go into that are like, like I said, small shacks. There's some larger ones. There was one voodoo priest down there. He considered himself like the head of all voodoo, Max Bouvier, and he was a very nice person and had a ceremony every year at his place. And he had a very nice, temple that you could go to. It was large. It was, well constructed. It had seating and everything to watch. But most temples and stuff that you go to, it's somewhat chaotic. It's generally like a rundown area, and you're going to have a lot of people in there, a lot of people moving in and out and stuff like that. And the rituals can go anywhere from, a couple of hours to days. So these things continue on. So like at some points, you might not want to be there if you're a photographer or what your interest is, because there's not a lot to see all the time. It's like if you walk into a Catholic church, if you've seen the ritual before, you might not be as, excited about it. But in voodoo, there's a lot more that takes place. When the possessions start to happen, there's always a sacrifice at every one of them. There's a lot of different things to see and a lot of different things to take pictures of.
So is the idea that these spirits are all like spirits of dead people, or do they mix it? Like, are there different types of spirits? Like some of them are like supernatural. I guess they would all be supernatural, right? But Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Are they all? Is the idea that the spirits are all people that have died?
They are. Yeah, they are people that died that did extraordinary things during their lives and stuff like that, and different things that they, went after. They're also from the spirits that were brought over from Africa that they originally worshipped. There's been changes, with Haitian Voodoo versus where it originated over in Benin, Togo, Nigeria, and things like that. And so you have some change in spirits. You also have a change in the types of voodoo that take place. There's two types in Haiti. It's Rada, which is generally a more calm voodoo. Always sacrifices,
Calm.
always possessions,
Yeah.
but more towards the good side, although they both use good and evil. And then there's more of the petro voodoo, which is more of your dark side. The stories you hear about from Wade Davis when he did his zombie experiments down there, and the different use of poisons and things.
In voodoo, so it sounds like it's a pretty loose, like, belief system religion, right? But do they have like a central voodoo church, like Catholics have the central church, right? And they have their central teachings, or is it just basically a loose conglomeration of beliefs?
Yeah, it's actually loose. So as I explained, like Max had probably the biggest temple in Port-au-Prince, and that was the primary one. Other ones are set up, and it's really about the spirits that they like to conjure, the people that they have visit with them, and the different people in their communities that worship there. So everybody kind of creates their own church to go to. But the one thing about voodoo and why it's best probably to go, during like if you're interested in seeing that, besides the adventure part, is to go during the festivals, because voodoo doesn't happen every Sunday. You might go one week and get lucky and maybe see a ceremony or two ceremonies, but if you really want to make sure that you get, to go to these temples and stuff like that and go to the graveyards and see voodoo in action, it's best to go during the celebrations.
Okay. So, you brought up another thing. You said that there's, they practice good and evil, right? Do they truly refer to it as good and evil? Like this is definitely bad, or is it light and dark is just a different side of the coin, so to speak? I mean, is it defined like that's definitely an evil spirit, or is it say that's a dark spirit?
No, there are definitely dark or evil spirits. I mean, ones that Busu, different types of spirits are going to be more related with, definitely the dark side. And then you'll have the lighter spirits. But when a ceremony takes place and they start to conjure different types of spirits to come down and possess people, you don't always get exactly who you want. So different spirits will arrive.
Okay.
And someone, you might be at a Rada ceremony, and let's say Azuli, kind of like the goddess of love, maybe they're trying to get her invoked, but a Gede comes down. And one of these spirits, gets somebody, and then all of a sudden the party turns very wild. And they're coming around and stuff like that. And it almost becomes a show, too, in that they have different things set up for the spirits that they're hoping will show up. So when they're doing this, they're going to have tobacco, they're going to have alcohol for the spirit, they're going to have, different things that they like. And people also get dressed as that spirit. So if someone were to come down and let's just say it turned into like, one of the Gede or something like that, I talked about the colors before, you're going to see the purple and the white and the red, you're going to see the powdered face, you're going to see people getting possessed.
We have a picture of that, right?
Yeah, so if you see the woman here, I mean, she's dragging a goat to be sacrificed at a party. So in this case here, all of the party had started off, or all of the celebration had started off with white, different incantations. They'll do verver, where they will put like symbolism to different spirits that were hoping to arrive. And then as people get possessed, like that woman was possessed, they start to bring out different animals and stuff that will be sacrificed during the period.
So there's always like an animal sacrifice.
There always is there animal sacrifice, yes, yeah.
It's part of it.
Yeah, and it really depends on which ceremony you're at. So, most of the time it's going to be chickens. That's probably the most common. You start to move up to goats, you go as high as, cows. And so there's...
Chickens are cheap, right?
Exactly, chickens are cheap. So the good thing, I mean, with the animals and stuff like that, it's not a quick kill. Some are very brutal to watch. Of how the animal dies and stuff like that. It's just part of the reality of, life down there and what takes place at the ceremony. But every part of the animal is used, from the fur to the hoofs to the meat. It's distributed amongst the people that are part of it.
That's interesting, because normally you think of a sacrifice as like you give up this goat. But really, it's not as much. It's a slaughter, right? If everybody gets to use it.
Yeah.
I think that's different from some sacrifices that you hear about, right? Because a lot of sacrifices are just wasted. There'll be an altar that has a bunch of fruit, and the fruit goes rotten, right?
Yeah, down there, so like, especially with the animals, so it's like the symbolism once it's done, they'll do different things around, if you have like the center of your voodoo temple and stuff, there's generally a pole that's there. Mm-hmm. And the pole is, it's the start of the ceremony to try to get the spirits to come down that and then to possess people.
A lightning rod or something.
Yeah, kind of like that. And what it will do is like, so you have two types of priests and priestesses. So you have Ugans, which are male, and then you have Mambos, which are female. And both have the same exact powers and things like that, and they'll have different initiates that work with them to help contain things once the possessions start. But it starts off with, like, I had talked about kind of the verver, which is the symbolism, who they'd like to have come down there. And then as it moves along, what they'll do is they'll invoke what they call Legba, which is basically St. Peter. He controls who can come down and opens it up. And once that's open, that portal then can have these spirits come down and possess people. And you're hoping that the priest is able to control it and get the right ones down for the right celebration. And that's what you want to happen.
But St. Peter's the gatekeeper again.
He is. And
that's interesting.
Yeah, so he's the gatekeeper by Catholic name, but it's really Legba, which is the voodoo. Their symbolism is the same, and that's how the Haitian slaves hid it from the French, and then also from the Catholic Church, is they would use St. Peter, he's the guardian of the gate, and then Legba was the god that they worshipped over in Dahomey.
That had the same function.
In Africa, yeah, a similar function, and then they combined those together. So when the Haitians would go to church, and it was forced during slavery, that they would pray to these certain, Chroma Lithographs and the saints, but they were really praying to their own gods. And then different things got mixed in from Catholicism. So you see crosses, you'll see all the different things from holy water. It's all these different symbols, but there is a syncretism between the two religions.
So why don't we do this? Can you walk us through a light ceremony and what that looks like? And then maybe later we'll talk about a dark ceremony and
sure.
And kind of compare and contrast. So walk us through what a light ceremony looks like.
So a light ceremony might be, you might go to, a temple and stuff like that. And, one of the things before I get into it is like finding the temples. So there's different temples that have different things. So you want to have the right person. You want to have a fixer that's going to be able to get you to what you want to see. So on a light voodoo, let's just say it's, some type of, let's say Agwe, which, is one of the gods of the ocean and stuff like that, or Azuli, who I explained earlier was kind of like, like the female god that, you'd want to bring down for peace and love and stuff. If that's the ceremony and stuff and that's what they're going for, what it'll be is you'll see a lot of people in white. You'll see a lot of dancing. You'll see music, the drums of the voodoo going all the time and stuff like that. The priest usually doing different types of things with the Assam, which is the rattle, and, going around the room, going up to a small altar that might have different offerings already there, kind of like you talked about with fruit and different things that Loa, the spirit, is going to enjoy. And then that can take place for, and that's where I was saying, like hours, if not days, and it's much slower. And then it starts to, kind of revolve and things start to move along. A lot of times the ceremonies will differ on different areas within the island. So if you're in the south, if you're in the far west, if you're in the north, there could be different ceremonies and how they take place. So after that, what they'll do is they'll start trying to bring these spirits down.
So all that before, that's like setting the stage. You're setting the stage. Like, look at this. With the symbolism and the ceremony, the idea is you're setting the stage to get the spirits to come down that you want to come down.
Correct.
But that's not necessarily what happens all the time.
Yeah, sometimes different spirits will show up. And, depending on what that spirit shows up for, the priest might have to dispatch them back or might let them, kind of roam around and stuff and make the ceremony much more exciting. But as the possessions start, it starts to become almost like a show. Like you'll start to have people, they'll start to wobble and stuff and start to fall. And then other parishioners will catch these individuals and help them to the ground. And then depending on what the ceremony is and stuff, and who actually comes down as possessed this person, they will actually get clothing that fits to who they are. They'll get offered different things that are part of that, and then they'll wander around. And different, participants will ask for things. They might ask for health, they might ask for love, they might ask for land back. There's all different types of things that these ceremonies take place for that people are going for. The same reason, people go to church here to pray for, different things.
So the idea is once someone comes down, once a spirit comes down and mounts someone, they become that spirit, like incarnated on earth or whatever.
Exactly.
And then people start asking them for favors.
People ask them for favors, and then also, depending on the spirit that comes down, that spirit might approach people and ask them for stuff, or start demanding it, or grabbing things, or making jokes. The Gede they're always like jokesters and stuff like that.
How do you know which one you got?
You see, it's usually based on what the dress of the person is when they come down. So let's say Legba was to come down and he was the one that is the guardian of the gate. He's depicted as an old man with a crutch. So you might have somebody kind of walking around with a cane or a crutch, and that's Legba, and he might be begging for money.
So people recognize these spirits and these possessions by how they're acting.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's very interesting and becomes like theatrical. And then the spirit might also, depending on who they are, be asking other people, or can sometimes even get violent and stuff like that and get out of control. And that's the reason that the priest will have different people that work with him or her, and they're coming in and they're kind of blocking that and making sure people are staying safe.
Bouncers.
Pretty much.
Like on the Springer show.
You got to kick the spirit out too.
So yeah, you mentioned that. You said you could dispatch them back. How does the priest dispatch a spirit back that, like, he gets the wrong spirit, comes down, you got to tell it to go home?
Honestly, I've been to a lot of different ceremonies. I mean, for them to really send it back, I've seen a couple of times where they'll throw like a towel over the person's head and shake it and stuff like that and set the person back, or maybe even a couple of people, depending on how much they're into the character. And the Haitians absolutely believe in the possession. How much they're possessed, they might have to be helped to the side and sat down or taken outside and wait until the possession wears off, where the person isn't a danger to themselves or anyone else.
So it's interesting. I got to ask at this point, are there any drugs involved?
Or
are these people sober?
The island is extremely poor. I mean, there could be a little bit of marijuana or something like that, but it's extremely poor. And even like the alcohol that's involved, I mean, it starts to flow pretty good towards like the middle and end of a ceremony, depending. But it's really not based on that. I mean, they truly believe in the possession and what's taking place, and it's part of the rituals that are happening.
So then, how does this ceremony conclude? Does it just peter out, or is there like some sort of conclusion where the spirits all go back?
A lot of times, as you get to the possession, and possessions can be, or not possession, I'm sorry, the sacrifices can be done at different times during it. Generally, the larger animal sacrifices will be done towards like the end of a ceremony and stuff like that, and then they'll continue on the next day or whatever is supposed to take place. But it doesn't have like an official end. Usually these things go on, and like you kind of said, it does kind of peter out. People start to leave and things like that. A lot of people have already been possessed. Pretty much the spirits have kind of shut down coming in, and all of a sudden the party has slowed down, and now you just have kind of the practitioners there, and the party ends.
That's interesting.
So yeah, it's a different world, and it's such a neat thing to see down there.
Yeah.
And they're very inviting people. Going there and stuff like that, you always want to bring some, Bancourt rum or cigarettes. They're probably going to ask for a little bit of money and stuff like that as a donation to the temple. But once you have the, religious leaders' permission to be in there, it's pretty much open. They kind of tell their people that, hey, this person has been invited. I've never had anybody, really block my photos when I've had the right permission and stuff like that. In fact, I've been invited up right next to like where different things are taking place by the mambo or the ugan, and being allowed to be right in the center of all the action. But it gets somewhat aggressive. There's a lot of pushing. There's a lot of people packed into a very small place, and some of the places can be pretty rough.
Yeah, you said a lot of these places are just like shacks, right? So
it could be a shack, it could be a falling down building, it's like...
But it's something that a spirit or a specific spirit that they is attached to.
Yeah. So what it'll be like, to give kind of a description of like, I mean, Port-au-Prince is a good example. You could walk through some of the poorer areas there, and you wouldn't even know that the temple was just inside like a gate. And then all of a sudden you'll wander down an alley and stuff like that, and it's usually you're going to have a fixer and somebody to get you there because you would never be able to find it. But you'll hear the drums and things, and then when you get to it, you go in, and usually there's like a small room that's an altar. And it will have whatever their main spirit is. It'll have lots of alcohol out for that spirit. It'll have like the fruit. It'll have, tobacco and things like that. And then you'll have like an open area. An open area could have, chairs and stuff like that for some people to sit and stuff. But there's a lot of dancing that goes on. So it's almost a room like we're in here, where you might have like a small temple off to the side that has, the spirits that are being worshipped and the priests getting ready for different things. And then also the people that are possessed might be taken into that room to change, to become that spirit that's out there. But then you've got drummers and, you've got singing and all kinds of different action taking place.
Huh.
It's pretty fascinating.
So that's a light ceremony, though. Now take us through like a dark ceremony. What does that look like when that happens? I mean, sometimes, well, first of all, they set the stage for it, right? Is that more or less common? Like, do they normally targeting light spirits, setting the stage to have a light ceremony, or are there definitely ceremonies that start off, this is going to be a dark ceremony?
Well, there's different types of priests. There's the Rada and the Petro Voodoo, and they're, like I said, both use good and evil. Some different temples that you'll go to, though, will be more based on evil. You'll go there, you'll see chroma lithographs that might depict more violence. So like Ugo Ferre is the god of war. So Saint Jacques, who's depicted by the Catholics as like a saint riding a horse with a spear, is that symbol. And the temple is just, it's set up that they want to invoke something to happen for somebody. Usually there's a specific purpose to it. It's either thanking them for what they had done for them during the year, or somebody has hired somebody and said, hey, listen, this person stole my wife or stole my land or whatever it may be, and I want something done to them. So these darker ceremonies absolutely take place.
So that's like the traditional, like we think the voodoo doll where, they're targeting someone else.
Yeah.
So this is kind of getting into that realm, right? But what does a standard dark ceremony look like? Do we have the pins and the dolls or anything at any point, or
No.
is that a Hollywood thing?
No, that's more Hollywood. Sometimes you'll see like some of the dolls nailed to some of the sacred trees and stuff like that, but not like the pin in the doll and stuff like that. It's more of them invoking like the spirits that are stronger. So you'll have somebody come down. So like if Ugu is to, let's say, take somebody and possess them, they might move around with a machete. They might come up to different people and talk to them about maybe why they wanted this person to come down and what they wants to have happen to somebody. The darker ceremonies usually have larger animals. So generally you're going to have your goats, your cows and bulls and things like that being taken as your possession, or as your sacrifice. So it's definitely on the far side of like what it is at a Rada ceremony, because it can also get quite aggressive if you're there and a lot of people are possessed. There's probably more drinking at some of those that I've been to. There's
And you
also
said the guy will run around with a machete, basically swinging the machete around.
Yeah,
And
he's
everybody-
somewhat careful. I think people are keeping an eye on him, but yeah,
Right.
they absolutely will carry the machete around and stuff. Fire is always another big thing that takes place. So it's really about where, and what ceremony you're at, but it's hard to say that one specifically looks very different. It's just the different spirits that come down and what they want done with those spirits.
And what's the difference in the vibe between those light and dark ceremonies, aside from it just being a little bit more crazy and intense?
I would just say, you have an element at some of the different peristyls that are just, I would say, more dangerous in the way of, you probably have some criminal element there. You have people that are robbing bodies and stuff like that to do different types of rituals and make different types of potions and things like that. Wade Davis did the most work on it. I mean, zombification, the Haitian zombie was, out of folklore, but, there's, even a penal code that was back in the 1800s that had outlawed the poison and stuff like that. That's in Haitian law. But Wade Davis did the most on this. He, I believe, saw 7 different makings of the poison that's used. So like in some of these darker rituals, and this would definitely be Petro Voodoo, someone might hire somebody to not kill maybe this person who has wronged them, but they might want them turned into a zombie. So they'll pay a great deal of money, and these poisons are made, and the poisons are used, they're blown into the face. They say you can't put it into food, but I have heard that they've done that. And what the main part of the poison is that usually kills is tritatotoxin, which is from the pufferfish.
Okay.
So this gets mixed into that, and there's an array of magic and a whole web of that goes into it, and they make the poison.
They're asking the spirit to make a poison that they can go poison someone with?
Yeah, they're asking, spirits to come down. They're making this poison, and then what they'll do is they'll put it into a bottle and use it to actually, create a zombie. And by folklore, I mean, I've never seen one. I've never seen the actual ritual that takes place. I have seen the powder after the effect, but that doesn't mean that it was the real stuff or anything. But with what work Wade Davis did down there and talks about it, it's really fascinating just like how it's made. It's made up in the woods, made over a period of time. The poison is extremely dangerous. For the most part, it usually kills the participant that they're going after. So instead of actually making them into a zombie and a slave that's going to be used and kind of tortured for life that somebody's asked someone to do to someone, it actually kills them.
So how do they get this they drag this person up into the hills or what?
So
like the
in
victim,
the hills,
so to speak.
No, in the hills what happens is that's where they go up to make it, or they'll make it at certain temples and stuff like that, and then they have to contain it. So there's two different types of zombies that come about. There's an astral zombie, which is one that they will hold in like a govi, like a sacred jar, and they feel that they can send it into people's dreams or use the spirit of this person that they've captured, and they'll torture it and make it work for the priest. So you might go into a certain temple and you'll see like a small chair with a jar hanging from the ceiling, and they're torturing it.
They're saying there's an astral zombie in there.
They're saying, that they've killed someone, and you might see even the body of the person they killed on the property, and they instead of, being able to bring them back from the dead, the person is dead, so they capture his spirit, and now they use the spirit as a slave.
So they but how, you say the body's on the property somewhere. So they
I've
murdered someone at some place? Or
I've
at
seen
some
the
point?
bodies on the property, yeah, absolutely. So they've actually probably carried that out for somebody that's hired them. Maybe it is a murder that takes place and stuff like that. And then what they'll do is if the person, obviously, can't be raised from the dead because of how they died, if it was through the poison or other methods, they'll take the spirit and they'll use the spirit then in an evil way.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So someone will hire the priests and their helpers to go kidnap someone and then bring them up to wherever, right? And then they'll have a ceremony at which point they're trying to turn him into a zombie. And they poison him, and either a zombie gets made, which we've never actually seen, or the person just dies from the poisoning and they catch the spirit.
Yeah, usually when the poison is made, someone will purchase that poison or ask the priest to use it. So the priest then will go out, whether they blow the powder in the face, whether they put it into somebody's food or whatever, the person then goes into a catonic state, and after that, they take the body. So they're not actually brought up to the ritual itself of making the poison. The poison is used after the fact.
Okay.
So
but the priest is like a hitman.
I mean, I guess
sense.
in some ways, yeah, it could absolutely be that, and he's being used for that, and he creates it, and there are ones down there that definitely are on the side of evil.
Huh.
So it can be real, it can be a real creepy peristyle that you come across where you might see skulls lying in the back, you might see bodies, you might see a coffin that they took because they go out grave robbing and stuff like that, and they're going to use different types of materials from the bone to put into the potion. So there's different things that are on the property that you wouldn't see too many other places.
Have you ever been observing all these ceremonies? Have you ever been like super spooked, just like felt like kind of chilled down to your bones, like?
Yeah, you absolutely, yeah. There's definitely some creepy things, especially as night falls and stuff like that, and you have this, and there's animals that have been sacrificed. There could be a dead body there. There could be coffins and things like that. There are creepy things that take place, and although I don't particularly believe in possession, the Haitians certainly do, and the people that are participating, and it doesn't look fake in any way.
Yeah.
It looks like the things are actually taking place. So yeah, there's absolutely a creepy factor there.
Yeah. But I guess it helps because it sounds like you don't believe in all that voodoo stuff, to use a phrase, right?
you know,
but I mean, I guess if you believe it's real, you're a little bit more emotionally involved.
that's absolutely correct.
So
Yeah.
you're a little bit more detached, but still creeped out frequently.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And in some of the temples, like I had described, like that small room in the back where you'll have different things. I mean, you might have tarantulas in a jar, or different types of worms, or different types of
Just all the nightmare stuff.
all the stuff that just scares you.
Yeah.
It's just creepy. So those are some of the things that you might see at the different ones that you go to.
Did you ever like fear, like from violence that you might get like hurt in a certain way? You said you got pushed around. Everybody gets pushed around and bumped and touched and everything like that. But did you ever feel like my life's in danger?
I wouldn't say directly in danger, but indirectly, like, seeing, I explained that one individual we saw that was killed 50 feet from us. Violence takes place down there quite a bit. There's lots of shootings and stuff. At the ceremonies, if you have the right permission, there's usually not a problem. And sometimes using the right fixers and stuff like that, and the people that are going to take you there, hoping that they know who the priest is it a safe place to be, or are you basically going to get robbed? I don't think they're looking to kill any of, like a visitor.
Right.
Unless you did something wrong to them, but you might get robbed. Absolutely. So there's always kind of a fear, like when you go to a new temple that you might not know the people, that something bad could happen. I've been going there for a long period of time, so I know the temples. I know the ones that are, more towards the evil side, more towards the good, but I have a trust within the priests, and they've never bothered me.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned criminal elements. So if you go to a dark evil ceremony, chances are there's a bunch of people there that want to have harm inflicted upon another person. That's traditionally the type of person that shows up, right?
That could absolutely be, yeah.
Yeah. So you're with the seedier element for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you run that risk, of being robbed and things like that. I mean, you're basically at their mercy. I mean, once you're there, these are usually up in the hills and stuff like that, or if it's in the town, I mean, to try to even think of ways to get out are very difficult. If you walk down somewhere, you always like to kind of think of like, okay, what is my escape route if this thing goes wrong?
Right.
And a lot of times, you might have went down 9 different halls in, a very poor area of the city, or you're out in the middle of the woods. There's really not much of an escape route, depending on when you've been there, and you can't really access it beforehand and kind of map out and make all your decisions. So, yeah, there is an element that you just want to, be on guard and stuff like that, and see how things are progressing and see how you're being treated. But like I said, usually, like, once you get in with, like, the main people, you're protected. Like, I've never had it where I felt like, okay, I'm just going to get attacked in any minute now. Nothing like that. And the Haitian people are actually very nice.
Yeah. Was there anything that you've ever seen that just like really was you're like, what the hell was that? Like, that really like almost unexplained, right? To a certain extent, or you saw someone, I don't know, that was so far into character or possessed that was just like, whoa, this is another level.
I would say probably one of the weirdest things I saw, and I think I had a picture of it. There was a skull that was put onto this iron post, and it was for Ugao and stuff, and it was at one of the more evil areas and stuff. And, we're seeing like the graveyard pictures here. You can see how they're broken apart. They'll go in, they'll slide those coffins out, they'll take the body, or, do whatever they want with it and stuff, and utilize the different tools. But I was at one where the skull was burning and there was a fire beneath it, and the person let me walk all over their farm. And I went into this one room, and there were all these jars, and they all had plates on them and stuff, but there were 2 dead bodies in the corner. And it was just, walking into that room, I remember seeing the 2 bodies, one just slumped, one kind of laying prone and stuff, and it was just like, whoa, where am I, man? I mean, this is just the far side of the world.
Yeah.
And it's just that creepy feeling comes over you, and you're like, okay, what have I gotten myself into, and how the hell do I get out of here?
So, like, these fresh dead bodies?
They were definitely not decaying yet, so yeah.
And could you tell, like, why they were dead?
No, I didn't go close enough to them. I was probably 5-10 feet away, but I couldn't see what had actually taken them.
You weren't into, like, inspecting them at that point.
No. You walk
Like
in.
maybe this barn isn't the right place for me right now.
It was shock by itself, just seeing these jars and then all of a sudden just glancing over and there's 2 dead bodies, and then you're kind of like looking, you're like, okay, is that real? And then you realize like, wow, yeah, it is. So you kind of beat feet out of that area of the farm.
Literally like a haunted house, but everything's real.
Everything's real, absolutely.
That's nuts.
It's quite, yeah. It can definitely be different.
So what was like you mentioned a lot of sacrifices happen. What was the worst sacrifice you saw? You said it wasn't a quick, clean sacrifice, which is actually kind of different from what I've heard about sacrifices. Clean, cut the neck and.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I mean, you can see the picture like in the corner with the woman laying with the 2 goats there that they killed. I mean, that particular kill there, they bled it into the bucket there and stuff like that. They start to put the markings on that, the verver to conjure up whatever spirit they want to bring down. They cut the genitals off and also put that into there, and then they'll slit the throat. But the brutality of it is oftentimes the knife is not sharp. So when the animal's dispatched, it's often not going to be a nice way.
Huh.
You would think behind the head or something like that, you take the animal and you break its spine or put it into the brain and kill it fast. A lot of times when the throat is slit, it's not a sharp knife. They're still trying to sharpen it on the stone. The animal's screaming, and you have this just music and dance and drums going off, and it just puts you in a whole nother world.
Yeah, what does that feel like?
It's an incredibly different feeling because you're so outside your normal element that it creates like this incredible feeling that you are at something so different. You're on the far side of the moon.
You ever feel like sick from it? Just like, ugh.
I worked for years as a paramedic, so I don't get sick from that. But it's something that you see, and it's brutal. But there's so much going on that it just takes you away, and it's like you're in a whole different world.
This is quite off the beaten path, huh?
It's definitely off the beaten path. I mean, you can find they used to do like tourist ceremonies and stuff down there. Not many people have went there. I mean, the warnings have been out for years, about problems that are going on in Haiti. A lot of it's, overkill of how much they say, like, how dangerous it is down there, at least now. But, you do have, a poor population. You do have different things taking place. You have very limited police force. So you're kind of on your own, and that's why, you want to make sure you have the right contacts.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you're writing a book about how to hire the right fixers and such, right? A guide to finding the right guide, which the right guide is super important. You get a right guide and you're where you want to be, and a bad guide is just a bad experience, right?
Yeah, I've been working on a chapter right now just on working with fixers like down in Mexico. So if you take like, just for instance, like one chapter I'm working on is Jardines de Humaya, which is the Narco Graveyard. So going in and seeing the Narco Graveyard in Culiacan, you need to have the right contacts. It's run by the Sinaloa cartel. There's, huge mausoleums and stuff in there and stuff like that. The cartel visits it. You can't just walk in there or something could happen to you. So it's like having those right contacts. For Haiti, it's the same type of thing, but it becomes more of like, it's not about the danger, it's about what you want to see and can they get you there. So a good fixer will know both good and evil. They'll know bad people, they'll know people on the police force, they'll be able to tell you where things are happening, and then they're making calls. So when we go to like different voodoo ceremonies, we'll have our fixer with us. We might be at the graveyard one minute, and then he'll say, hey, a big sacrifice is taking place up in, Pentonville, let's go. And we'll get in a car and go up there, and we'll get there right before it takes place. Get the pictures that we wanted, and then you might hop to another one. So you're continuously moving around, but this fixer's on the phone, he's talking to them, he's making sure that you're going to be able to get invited, that you're going to be invited in, that things are going to happen, and if you have that right person, they can pretty much set up anything for you.
And what is the key to getting invited in? Is it booze, cigarettes, and money? Combination of all three? Having the right fixer, obviously, but basically what gets you into one of these as a tourist?
I would say more along the lines like, the gifts that you're giving them, the people are very, very generous. There's a Mambo Vivi that is found up in Pointe du Nord, and she has one of the biggest peristols up there. And Pointe du Nord is more towards, I would guess, the Petro side, because it's the Festival of St. Jacques, which is Uga, the god of war. And she's never asked for anything from me. But I always bring her a gift of like the Bamco rum, cigarettes. I'll leave, some cash and stuff like that. But she's just been extremely generous.
What's the rum? The Bancor rum?
Bancor rum is a type of rum that they have in Haiti.
That's just the local.
It is, yeah.
Local stuff.
Yeah. So, you go to the liquor store, you get a bunch of bottles of that, keep that in the car and stuff. And then as you go into a ceremony, once you get invited and they talk to you and stuff like that, you make that offering to them.
You never bring them any imports? They don't like the imported rum?
No, I never have. Probably.
Black Seal?
They would take it. I don't think they'd have any kind of problem with it.
Yeah. How is the Bancor rum? Is it good?
It's not bad. Yeah. It's not bad.
I mean, is it better than Bacardi?
I would say it'd be on par with Bacardi.
On par. On par. Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely not bad. You could enjoy yourself with that.
Wow, that's fascinating. So you did mention, we kind of skipped over all the adventure stuff to do in Haiti.
Yeah.
Because we got into all the voodoo stuff. Was there before we leave the voodoo stuff? Was there anything else that you just saw that was crazy in all those ceremonies?
I would just say really, like just the possessions and like I had talked before, like when the possessions and the sacrifices and everything is going off at the same time, that's really what does it. It's so different and you're in such a different world.
Yeah.
And that's where it really takes you.
All right, so let's talk about some of the adventure stuff. You did some motorcycling around there, right?
Yeah, the motorcycling is outstanding there. You have basically dirt roads everywhere.
Okay.
And stuff like that. And, you can go, there's, mountains upon mountains. And you can travel all over the country. There's really no rules.
And what type of bike are you on?
You know what? Usually I'll have one of the people that I know down there get me a type of dirt bike, like a 400cc or something like that. I don't import my bike down there or anything like that.
Yeah.
But, riding around, you can get to all the different places. And what's great about it is you get into a village, and let's say it's a little bit late at night, you can always find a place to stay. The people are very welcoming and stuff like that. You give them a little bit of money, and at least you get a roof over your head.
Right.
Or you can even put a tent outside or something. But the motorcycling is just spectacular. You could have single track. You could ride road all day. You can go from the north to the south. It's pretty much free reign. Mm-hmm. But the challenging roads that are there really are a draw for anybody who wants a motorcycle. And you're not going to see a ton of traffic on it either. On the main paved roads you will, but once you get up into the mountains and stuff like that, it's basically yours.
And you're on your own for this?
It depends. I've ridden with friends down there, and I've ridden by myself down there.
Yeah.
And, never had a problem at all and
you
stuff.
Need like a guide or a fixer? The
No.
fixers are basically just to get you to the right ceremonies.
Yeah, or I'll call one of the fixers that I know down there and get a bike. Have them set me up one.
Right.
So it's with that. And then, you've also got scuba diving. I mean, not many people go down there to dive, but the diving's excellent. It was, I believe, late 1990s that the U.S. had come down there. It was during the coup, and they brought a lot of the PT boats out and scuttled them. The U.S. Navy did during the coup when they settled that down. And the PT boats are still, a number of them, in like water that you can dive, 80 to 120 feet.
Yeah.
Some were scuttled deeper and stuff, but you'll find bent firearms down there. You'll find there's a couple of different tanker ships, small tanker ships that have sunk down there. Some just really cool diving, and no one's there. So you're kind of like one of the first to see that, outside. And when you're, if you're talking to somebody and you're like, hey, where'd you dive last? And you're like, oh, I just diving in Haiti. And they're like, oh my God, what's that like?
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's got to be really great. Like I said, because of the deforestation and stuff, because, they use the trees for coal and things like that and for cooking. And a lot of the soil has damaged the reefs. Mm-hmm. So the reefs aren't as pristine as if you went to some of the other islands in the Caribbean. I would say, if comparably, it'd be kind of like, Jamaica's reefs aren't that great either, something like that. But it's really like the diversity of the diving that's down there. You can definitely get reef, you can definitely get wreck diving, drift diving, whatever you're looking for, you can find.
And is this all shore diving, or are you hiring boats?
No, hiring a boat.
Okay.
Yeah. I've dove off the shore down there, too. There's probably 2 or 3 dive shops. Pegasus Dive Shop that's close to Port-au-Prince is who I've used before. Jose Roy has just been a great host. Mm-hmm. He does an outstanding job with his company. He has a boat down there. He can get you out to any of the wrecks you want and really knows the area as well.
Yeah.
So just some great diving.
That's cool.
Yeah. And you just don't have any, I mean, just like I said, the lack of just tourists by themselves, you've kind of got this island to yourself.
And what
that's
is
really
the state?
nice.
Because you mentioned they had a big deforestation campaign, right? They cut down all the trees. That's history. What does it look like now?
Well, it's interesting. If you fly from the Dominican Republic over, you'll go from green, lush jungle, and then all of a sudden there'll just be a stark contrast where it'll be just like brown mountains. And you'll have some green jungle in there too, but it's just, you'll be able to see it. It's widespread. And the mountains that are next to the water there, you just have so much that has pushed the soil into it that the reef itself has just died. So you do have a lot of that.
And then you said you went there after the earthquake, right? What was that like?
I mean, that was just a horrible period for the Haitian people and stuff like that. That earthquake just destroyed so much. I mean, the amount of death was just really unbelievable. I mean, there were bodies that, and I went there months after, and it was still, there was, bodies that were still decaying. There was at the main graveyard in Port-au-Prince, they had one area where they dumped a lot of the bodies and stuff. Buildings were just completely crushed. There just wasn't a lot of aid, and then there was just tents and different types of, areas that they made up that were trying to house people at. But, just a very tough time, for them trying to get through that and trying to even get aid down there and then being able to deliver that aid throughout the country. And I think one of the most stark things that stands out to me was like just seeing the Capitol, which somewhat looked like the White House. It was collapsed in on itself. And it sits behind this amazing fence, just like our White House does. And the whole top of the, Capitol itself had caved in on itself. And, it was littered with, all the different cement blocks and everything like that. And that really kind of set the stage of like how bad this was.
Yeah.
And that the country was left in ruins and still, continues to recover from it.
And did you see that reflected at all in the ceremonies at that time?
No, at that time, I really don't remember seeing many ceremonies at all. A lot of the stuff was, people were still helping with cleanup and stuff like that. Things were starting to get back a little bit to normal and stuff. But for most of, the temples and things like that, I didn't see a lot of voodoo when I was down there.
So they were basically shut down?
Yeah, I think it was just, they might have been some, more private ceremonies, but it was so decimated by that and just the power of that earthquake that it really just rattled everything, at least in Port-au-Prince.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah, terrible time for them.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's take some questions from the chat, Mike.
Yeah.
And see what people have been saying. I'm sure this has been fascinating, so I'm sure there's lots of questions in there. Andy, what do you got in that chat?
For sure, folks. Thank you for tuning in tonight. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving and are getting into the holiday spirit. We have a bunch of questions in the chat tonight, so let's dive right in. First question comes from Parviz Malakuti. Thank you for the question, Parviz. And Parviz wants to know, top questions are security, walking around Haiti, sticking out as a foreigner. What did you do to keep safe? Have you ever been mugged? And what are your tips?
Yeah, so that's an absolute concern, walking around Haiti and stuff like that. I mean, you're definitely better off being within a group. You're better off getting, if you're going like to the graveyards or something like that. There's not like a lot of like walking around the shops or things like that, or walking to a bar or anything. There just really isn't that. There's some areas that will have like cooking and stuff, but really like walking to the graveyards, getting there early before people do start to drink, before it becomes, out of hand, although that can happen pretty quick. But I think just standing your guard. I've had a knife pulled on me before down there. I mean, I think you just really stand your ground and talk the person back down from it. Always kind of watching yourself. But then I think another thing is too, especially at these ceremonies, is having those allies, the people that you start to have some type of alliance with. When I'm at a voodoo ceremony or I'm in the graveyards or something, I'll recognize a group. I'll walk over. I carry cigarettes and stuff all the time. I'll share cigarettes with them. I don't smoke, but I will when I'm down there. And I'll have like a group. So if I start to get bothered by someone, I might go back to that larger group, have another cigarette with them, and then maybe that person that was trailing me or something like that soon moves away.
Right.
So it's really being aware of your surroundings. And I don't know. I say get out while the getting's good. So if it starts to go bad, and I know that something's going to happen, I get out pretty early.
Yeah. Situational awareness. Is always important.
Exactly. There you go.
Yeah. All right. Next question, please.
Next question is it taboo to bust out a camera and start recording the ceremony?
No, not in any way, but you want to have that permission, because once you pull that camera out and you start shooting pictures, you are going to have people all over you for money. So they're going to be putting their hand out and asking for stuff. But if you have the priest's permission and you have their backup, they're going to tell them that you're allowed to basically do anything.
Interesting.
Very. Next question is, how long do ceremonies last? And how many do they do in a year typically?
It's hard to say. Like most ceremonies throughout the year, except during the holidays, are kind of by appointment. It's like when somebody needs something, someone's getting married, someone has passed away, someone wants something done or wants to invoke the spirits. So, how many per year, it really depends. I mean, it could be 50, it could be 100, but there's no set schedule whatsoever. So if you are interested in seeing it, you want to go during the festival times. There's 3 primary ones that I go to. Vodou is an excellent one. That's about maybe 60 miles out of Port-au-Prince, and it's on the waterfalls, and it's just a spectacular mountain area. And there's all kinds of voodoo ceremonies going on there, and you can easily get into every one. And at the ceremonies also, as is the graveyard, you're really open with the cameras. We don't get a lot of problems. If someone is upset, sometimes you'll have the camera hit and push down, but nothing more than that. The next one would be Gede, which takes place November 1st and 2nd. That's my absolute favorite. That one just is wild. There's just so many different peristyls going off, and the Gede ceremonies are really nice. And then you have up to the north, Plaine du Nord, and there's a giant mud pit, and you will have and this is a very unique ceremony that takes place, and this is more towards Uga and Petro that I talked about, but in this ceremony you will have all kinds of different peristyls, and you'll have these guys and women that are in this mud pit, and it's just this long, maybe 100-foot pit of mud. And what will happen is they'll be throwing blood into it from the cow sacrifices. The one down there that I got some great pictures and I think I have one of them, they threw the head of the cow, and all the guys were fighting over it. And this pit is covered with mosquitoes and everything, and cigarettes floating and stuff. And he was able to raise and put the cow on top of his head, and felt that he was the god and got out of it. So you can get just the most unique pictures from these, but you want to go when the time is going to be there. And that last picture you had up was Mambo Vivi, and she's probably one of the most generous people that I've worked with in Haiti.
All right, next question, Andy.
For sure. Next question comes from Parviz. And Parviz wants to know once again, what did you do to get the permission of religious leaders?
So generally, this is where it goes to. You've got to have a fixer, or you got to have somebody that has some kind of a contact to get you in there. If you wander into a ceremony, you're going to have to, unless you speak the language, speak Creole or French, you can get along. I don't. But finding who the priest is, talking to the priest, it helps if you have the right person. So what that person will do then is they will get you to there, they will do all the talking, and then they'll tell them what you want. And then that person, the priest, will usually invite you in, and that's where I always lead off by giving some type of a gift for letting me there, and then ask them permission if I can do that, and ask them if I can give them some kind of a donation, and just kind of make a friend out of them. And work to build a rapport, and that not only gets you into the ceremony and allows you free access, it also gets you protected if something happens, because they run everything in the peristyle.
Makes sense.
Makes sense. Next question is from Sinclair, and Sinclair wants to know, what is spoken most in Haiti? Is it French, Haitian, Creole, or English?
Yeah, Creole is the most, French second, English and probably Spanish third. And it's very limited if you don't speak it. English outside of Port-au-Prince, it can be hard to communicate and stuff like that. So you definitely want to have, some control of the language if you're going to do it.
How much Creole do you speak?
I speak next to nothing.
You could say thank you.
I don't even think I can say thank you.
All right, next question, please.
Next question comes from Sinclair, and Sinclair wants to know, are the beaches clean or are they full of garbage washing ashore?
Yeah, garbage is a huge issue down there. Many of the beaches, in fact, I would say probably the majority that I've been to are very dirty. There's a couple of resorts that will clean the beaches and keep it the best they can, but plastic and trash is a huge problem in Haiti and the disposal of it. So, yeah, absolutely. It's not like you're just going to be able to go to this beautiful white sand beach and go for a swim. In a lot of cases, it'll be covered with, garbage.
Now, is that a result of the trash that's generated in Haiti, or is that from like some current that's dropping a bunch of trash on their shores?
I would say mainly from Haiti.
Yeah.
I think it's just there's just so much garbage that's built up. The infrastructure of Haiti is so weak. They just don't have enough of garbage collectors and things like that. And if you go out to the landfills and stuff like that, there's people that live out there and live off of what they find in the landfill. But a lot of stuff, when they're done with it, it's discarded right out the window of the car. So
it's that kind of place.
Yeah.
All right, next question, please.
Final question of the night. I guess it can go for either one of you. Are those real ivory tusks?
Yes, they are. They are old. They are real. We've had to move them a couple times. They don't move too well. But yeah, those are one of the. We've got a couple of exhibits here that are literally from the 20s and 30s, and those are one of them, right? So, ancient. Well, thank you guys very much for joining us tonight. I think that was the last question, right, Andy? Mike, thank you for joining us. Thank you for making the drive up from San Diego. We appreciate that.
Absolutely.
This was an absolutely fascinating talk.
Hey, thank you very much for the invite, and thank you for everybody for joining.
Yeah, and we will see you guys next week.